before I watch these last two late West Coast kickoff game for the midweek action, and that I, of course, will be reviewing these three games that happen in the midweek action of match week number 29, let's do a little bit of a news of the week kind of video. And if you're a Chicago Fire fan, there's definitely been a lot to cheer about in the last couple of weeks. The teams started to look like they have found their groove at the right part of the season, and that somehow, in some way, they have got themselves back into playoff position and are looking in a very good shape of actually making the playoffs heading into this season. And the fact that there was a couple of weeks ago that it looked like they are finally going to be relocated back to Chicago, and that they're going to be leaving SeaTac Stadium and play at Soldier Field next season in Chicago. Well, there's even more great news for Chicago Fire fans to hear, as last week it was announced that they officially have got a new owner, and that their old owner Hoffman decided to sell the team, and that the new owner is going to be Joe Mansueto, who is a local billionaire for in Chicago, and that he of course just bought the team, and that also they have officially announced that they are going to be relocated to Soldier Field next season. I mean, there is no doubt that this is probably the best news that any Chicago Fire fans have received, and that there's definitely a lot of optimism with this fan base right now. And anytime when you have either a new coaching change or a new front office change, or even in a rarity, an ownership change that has happened with a team, there is definitely going to be a lot of optimism, and that there is definitely going to be some energy that brings to the team. So I think in many ways, with the way that the team has kind of ride in a high in the last couple of weeks, and now the fact that they officially announced that there's going to be a new owner, that I have heard that they're going to try to pump in some money into this team, and they're going to try to go after some big signings and make sure that they of course would advertise this team so that they of course can have the stadium to be filled on game day. This is definitely a very promising time for the Chicago Fire, and I think for the fans of the Chicago Fire, they absolutely deserve this, because it's been a miserable last couple of years, and that for the last couple of years I have heard nothing but just complain with the fact that fans are not happy with their ownership and not happy with their GM. Obviously, I know there are still fans that are not happy with their GM, with the fact that Nelson Rodriguez is still there, and that a lot of fans would want him to be the next to go. But at least now they are going to be finally going back to Chicago, where they of course started, and that they are going to be heading into next season, whether they make the playoffs or not, with a lot of optimism that this new owner is going to get to really commit to this team and build this team to a playoff level kind of team. Now, moving on, in terms of the next news, is that MLS and Liga MX are looking to join league by following the MLB motto. So this is not the first time we have heard the fact that MLS and Liga MX in the future is planning to just kind of join league, to just create kind of a North America Super League, and that there's been kind of a lot of proposal how this will do, and a lot of people think that it's basically a joke. But yesterday they of course just announced another way that they are going to try to make this kind of North America Super League work, which is they're going to follow the MLB model. And what I think they're going to try to do is that MLS is pretty much going to be the American League, and Liga MX is going to be the National League, and that when they have like interleague matchup, which is not going to be very often, that's what's going to happen here. And that in terms of the championship game, you're going to have one MLS team that is going to be representing in the kind of American League, and then you have a Liga MX team kind of representing as the National League, and then they kind of have a championship game. Now, is that an effective kind of model? I don't know. And, again, like many fans, I'm kind of one of those that is kind of against the fact that MLS and Liga MX should join force. I mean, both leagues are definitely considered the best league that we have here in CONCACAF, and that I just think that there's really no need for them to join together. Like, why can't each country just have like a separate kind of league, and that just kind of go with that. And then if they do have to face off each other, then why don't we just do it in the CONCACAF Champions League, or even in the League Cup now that they, of course, have created this new tournament. So, I don't see this could happen in the future, but it's definitely something that they, of course, propose that could happen in terms of them maybe in the future potentially joining Liga MX and MLS as a single league. Now, talking about some signings that has happened this week, and I know we are heading into the period where there's usually not a lot of signings that has happened, but we did have one signings that was done this week, and this was something that I kind of mentioned a couple of weeks ago, but I'm just going to mention it again because, it is official that DC have signed Yamil Assad on a pre-contract for 2020, and that, I know I said a couple of weeks ago, it was rumored to be done and that it was really at the last step. Well, now it is official that he will be joining DC next season, and it's definitely a great signing for DC. I mean, I never understand why did they decide not to buy him when his loan deal was about to expire. I mean, he was definitely a very good player when he was with DC, and the fact that now they, of course, are going to sign him on a permanent deal, I think this could really bring some kind of new flavor in terms of this DC attack that has just been very bland for the last couple of months. Now, LAFC are rumored that they are trying to get Juventus attacker Mario Mandzukic to come to MLS. Now, I think most likely if LAFC is going to get Mario Mandzukic, I think most likely Diego Rossi. They're thinking that Diego Rossi will depart and that Mario Mandzukic would be the replacement for them. It's definitely not a bad replacement. I mean, Mandzukic has been a very good attacker, and I heard that Mandzukic did kind of said that he's kind of bored of being at Juventus and that he maybe wants a new challenge. So, we'll see if this, of course, would happen. Obviously, in order for this to happen, I think most likely LAFC will need to get rid of one of their designated player, because Mandzukic, if he does come to MLS, he's definitely going to be a designated player. And that since there's been a lot of rumor that LAFC eventually is going to finally cash in on that Diego Rossi kind of profit that they earn when they develop him throughout his season in MLS and with this team, I think once they cash that money out, they're going to use that cash to try to get Mario Mandzukic, and that it's very effective in terms of them getting rid of one of their superstars for some profit and bringing in another superstar and a well-known name to basically replace him on the attacking end. Now, FC Dallas have agreed to extend Ryan Hollingshead contract to 2021, and there is an option to extend in 2022, and that, like many contract that in these past couple of weeks that has been announced, this one is definitely a good contract for Dallas, extending Ryan Hollingshead's his contract to 2021. I mean, he's been definitely one of the least talked about guy in MLS, but when I see him play and how he is not only a very versatile defender and that he can literally play any position on the field if he's asked to, but he's also a goal scorer for this Dallas team. I mean, most of the goals that we have seen Dallas score has really come to him, and for a guy that usually spent his time playing as a fullback, that is kind of a very odd thing to say. But he's been so good in terms of being a versatile defense, and that it only makes sense that Dallas will have to extend his contract to 2021 and beyond, and that is exactly what they did here. Now, in terms of some of the discipline that Disco has handed out this week, we start off with Orlando City and TFC both getting fines for violating league policy in terms of the mass confrontation policy, and I believe this, for TFC, this is actually the second time in a week that they actually got fined for a mass confrontation policy, because I think earlier when they were playing against NYCFC in the last midweek action, they also had a mass confrontation and that they also got fined for that. So it's a double whammy for TFC in terms of violating this policy, and I'm guessing they're going to have to pay double the fines in terms of that. Now, in terms of some of the players that got disciplinary issue in this week, we got Nani and Baji both getting fined for violating the league policy of hands to the face. And then you got Watson, who of course was sent off in that game against Montreal, was fine because he didn't leave the field in a timely manner. And then finally, Mason Toye is going to be fined for simulation after there, of course, he dived in that game against I think it was Houston was the game that he of course embellished a little bit. So yeah, he of course will be fined for that. But in terms of the player of the week, no surprise, it's Zlatan that won the player of the week. I mean, when you see him score a hat trick, you knew that he is gonna be the player of the week. And Zlatan, in classic fashion, made another statement to everyone that he is considered the best player in the league, as he of course tweeted that out this week. And again, I think this is probably the 1 millionth time that Zlatan has been typing on Twitter and saying that he is by far the best player in the league and that nobody comes close to him. It's debatable whether or not if he's the league best player. I mean, he certainly has the goals to speak of, and that what he has done at this kind of age that he is in right now is quite spectacular. But I'll let you decide whether or not if he is the player of the week. And if you want to hear my opinion of whether or not if he's the best player in the league, absolutely not. He is not even close to being as the best player in the league, and not even maybe even in my top 5 player of the league so far this season. Now, Columbus is going to be setting to have a groundbreaking ceremony on October 10th in their new stadium. So last week I talked about how they are going to eventually groundbreak their new stadium, and eventually they're going to build a new stadium to replace an aging infrastructure known as Montfree Stadium, and that they're going to do that in October 10. While Miami have released season ticket price for 2020, and that, keep in mind, Miami is not going to be playing in their brand new shiny stadium that David Beckham originally said that they of course are going to be playing in, and that the shiny new stadium I'm talking about is at Freedom Park, which I also have heard there's news where they can't really start the process of groundbreaking that stadium because that ground contains some kind of arsenic that is just, it's poisonous, and that you just cannot build a stadium with that kind of soil on the ground. So yeah, it will be very interesting to see how they would resolve it. And it's also kind of an iconic duo, the fact that, Miami, whenever we hear about this team and the talk about stadium thing, it's usually they have some problem with whether they haven't really start building the stadium, or there's some conflict with the city council, or in this case they have found some arsenic on the soil and that they cannot build this stadium and start the groundbreaking process until they of course remove that arsenic and remove that contaminated soil away from the ground. And finally, this news is kind of a little bit unrelated to MLS, but Jesse Marsch, who is the former manager for the Red Bulls and now the current manager for Red Bulls Salzburg, becomes the first American manager to win a game in the UEFA Champions League, as his RB Salzburg team was able to win 6-2 against Genk in that game in the UEFA Champions League. And certainly congratulations to Jesse Marsch to complete this kind of accomplishment. And you just wonder, with him continue to do well with RB Salzburg, maybe he could potentially be the future manager for the U.S. men's national team. I mean, I've heard a lot of whisper the fact that he probably will in a couple of years be the next head coach for the U.S. men's national team. But for me, I think he's still very young, and that unless if Greg Berhalter absolutely screwed this up and that somehow in some way this team does not qualify for another World Cup heading into 2022, maybe Jesse Marsch would be one of those guys that they'll look at in. But I do also have to warn you, just because a manager does well with their club team, it doesn't always translate well when they go into the international level. And you're kind of start seeing that with Greg Berhalter, where he did a good job with Columbus and that he was always hailed as the potential next head coach of the U.S. men's national team, and now he is the next head coach of the current head coach of the U.S. men's national team. And you look at how many people have been ridiculing him and saying that he should never be hired in this job at the first place. So yeah, I don't know if this is going to be the same case with Jesse Marsch, if he of course eventually going to be with the be the head coach for the national team. But again, I do warn you the fact that not every scenario where you have a good head coach at the club level would do well in international level, mainly because it's so much different in terms of coaching in the club level than it is when you are coaching in the international level. But either way, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of these news, and if I miss any important news from this last week, let me know in the comments below and I'll try my best to respond to that news. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video and I will see you guys next time.